Hello, welcome back to Stranded Deep, welcome back to Pacific Paradise, and welcome back to this island we're making. Last time we were working on putting a little stream, a little river into our world. So we have this here, which goes into the island, kind of around the forest itself, but does not connect back up with the sea. We put a load of rocks here, so we pile some rocks up to act as the stream's source. And then we put some plants over the outside, including lava, because... well, we needed some vines, and that's as close to vines as we're going to get. The plant itself has no use in the game, so the little pink fruit in the center, the flower in the center, is unlikely to be picked by a player. So we did that. We also went over to our DC3 because we've looked at this island in the world itself, in the game itself. And we figured that the DC3 was not being supported by enough trees, so we added a world tree underneath and then promptly took it away and added a small ficus instead, because one of the things that I wanted is to have the underside of the aircraft all lit up by the sun at certain times of the day to keep it open and airy, and that really does keep it open and airy, so you still have plants and trees holding the thing up, but it is now a little bit more open than it was. However, if you are joining us for the first time, well, welcome to the PC version of the map editor. W goes forward, S goes back, A goes left, D goes right. Q goes down, E goes up. Right-clicking and holding the mouse, that pans the mouse around. There are some other things you need to know, such as the camera speed. Speeds up and slows down when you're near objects, and it can sometimes speed up and slow down quite rapidly, especially when you're away from all objects and suddenly you shoot forward. There is no constant velocity in the game. We're not having frame drops, we're not having lag. It's just that the camera, with this many objects on an island, is going to scoot around of its own volition. There's nothing we can do about that. Also, if you're using the brushes, say you are smoothing the height around the outside of your island, and then you switch to raise and lower height, the amount slider is inherited between all of the brushes. If you were to say click lower, and then left click after smoothing, with a very high amount slider, you will punch a hole straight through to the bottom of the world. Save often there is no undo, and as a habit, change that amount slider all the way to 0 in between using your brushes. So when you've stopped using a brush, change it to 0 because that might save you. Anyway, in the interest of going big and going home, what we need to do is pan the camera up. We have added quite a few items and features to this island. There is an offshore island. In fact, there are a couple of offshore islands. There is a survivor's camp, there is a little wreck, there is a bigger wreck, with its back broken on this island over here. We're going to need to do something more, I think, with the side of it, because we've added trees and various bits and pieces, but I feel that something not quite, there's still something missing over here. But, I also feel we need to go big or go home. So what can we do? Well, we have some natural harbours around the outside of the island, and one of the things you're going to need to do is make sure anyone who is coming to your island by boat, by raft, can land safely. So there are going to need to be big and open beaches. You're going to need to leave big spaces for them to come in fast and hard, because they might be being chased by sharks or something unpleasant in the water. But by adding a lot of rocks and things that you can't land against, well, you might stop them from doing that. Having said that, we're going to open the rocks tool panel and we're going to find these cliff pieces. And we're just going to grab a few from here. So we have cliff 3, which is quite nice. Cliff 4, that's also quite nice. Cliff 6, which is quite big. So we're going to find a place to put these, and we're going to be looking at the shadows. Now we could put them over here into the sea, and we can push them out quite far. Now it might be a good idea to have some rocks over here, just off of the island itself. That might be a decent idea. Or we could do something with this here. And I think we need to do something with this side of the island. Now, one of the big problems is that we have this bay. We could fill the bay in. We could bring the whole thing out. That would be fine. Or we could just work with what we have. We know a few things are going to be a problem. The smoothing brush. We smoothed all of this last time. When you save a map in the PC version of the game at 1.0, and then you go back into it, all your smoothed edges are gone. So that is something that is a bug in the game. is something that is something of a pain in the butt. But what we can do is grab some cliff pieces and move them around. Now what we need to do is just create something with some height. What we can do is just drag these pieces and drop them into the ground if we should so desire. So I think we can do that. We have some sandy beach here, but it might be a good idea to position some of these in. The closer you get to them, the greater their LOD, so the greater detail they have. The further away you go, the LOD, or the level of detail, drops significantly. So sometimes it's worth actually getting quite close and just getting yourself in there. And one of the things we can do, let's position these like this. Just grab some cliff pieces and just drop them in. Now the story, or the reason why these would be here, is because we've already put them in the forest itself. So we have various bits and pieces in the forest with lots of rocks. We have some rocks along here. And what we can do is we can just follow what we've already done and position them in. So sort of curve them around so that technically these all follow a path. We can do that. But what if we have things that, well, they kind of, do they work together? Yeah, you can actually stack cliff pieces together and they mesh quite convincingly. And if we hit R, we can rotate that around, so you have the slope side, which we know we can run up. E to transform. So we'll push that together. And that breaks the line of sight from one side of the island to another. If we want to check that, we hit terrain objects, so we have nothing selected. We can go to structures, grab the door. We know the window is the height of the player. So the player's head. Yeah, that seems okay. Player would have to walk around. So the player is now naturally going to be running this way. They will get to here and they can either go up through the forest or they can go along the coast. So what we might need to do is make the sand, pull out the sand a little bit more here. Or do something so it's a little easier or a little wider. The path is a little bit more obvious for the player. And I think that's exactly what we'll do. So we will hit set height, read terrain paint height, read it from with mouse clicks, which is the center of the brush size down significantly. Mouse slider just off the stop, left click and hold, and we'll bring this up a bit here. There we go. Still need the coast to be, well, coasty. Read terrain paint height, the dry sand. So the coast goes in and out with the actions of the waves. That's what you need. So a very straight edge to the island is undesirable because that's fairly unnatural. So we'll bring that up. There we go. And you can have a deeper area around the rocks themselves. So we could say hit lower and then just turn off the, well, we'll look at the sky first. Turn off the ocean. Looking at the sky locks the shadows. And just hit lower, size, same size, amount just off the stop, push and hold. Just lower it around here. There we go. You can do the same here. Because of the action of the sand, it might not even be noticeable in game, but we know it's there. And do the same here. Just push that around and it'll curve. Just pushing and holding, just holding the left mouse button. Excellent. Turn the ocean back on. And now we have some interaction between the sand and the rocks themselves. What we're going to do is hit read terrain paint height. So we're going to select the height and just bring that up so it's just touching that rock. There we go. Doesn't need to be completely dry sand, but we'll do that anyway. Smooth it off. Smoothing really doesn't work too well in this version of the game, but we'll do it anyway because it evens the height around objects. So push and hold and just allow the brush to do its thing. Now we have an awkward right angle there. So what we'll do is we will read terrain paint height from slightly further out. Change the size of the brush down. We can check that by looking on the beach itself, because it disappears when it's under the water. If we wanted to paint under the water, we could just turn the water off and then bring that in a little bit here. There we go. And then smooth that using a larger brush. Smooth and just push and hold. Push and hold. You can change the amount up. It's better. Yeah, it looks a little more natural. These jagged edges, we can't really do much with them. So we can change the size of the brush to a medium size, crank it all the way up, and then smooth all of this, which is fine until we come back into the game, in which case all of this will be jagged again, so we don't need to worry too much about that. Now, what we can do here is perhaps make this area in between the rocks a little deeper. So we will look at the sky, turn the ocean off and come back down just so that the shadows are locked, because otherwise it's slightly awkward. I will hit raise and lower. That amount slider is all the way up. That would be fatal. So we'll just push left mouse button and hold and just run it between these rocks. There we go. Excellent. And we will turn the ocean back on. Good. We need it deep enough so if a player jumps off one of these, then they can absolutely survive the fall. Now what else can we do? Well, that's a good question. What we can do is go back to objects and rocks. We could add a way to climb up here. That would be a thing to do. If we add regular rocks, which is something you can do, the downside to that is the textures mismatch. But what we can do is just add regular rocks here and there, because the top of them are covered in moss, but the bottoms of these rock pieces, well, anything closer to the water you might forgive from wave action just cleaning the rock itself up. So we're just going to add some here and maybe some over here. Can you jump up onto this? No, it's a little too high. So what I want to do is allow the player to be able to jump up onto them, but not be so obvious that that's what we're doing. So we're using R and T, and it should be fairly simple to do this because the player model is very forgiving when it comes to jumping up on things. In fact, what we can do is just press C to clone. That's probably an easier way of doing it. So move back, and then R to rotate. T to transform, and just put that in there. R to rotate again. There we go. So you've got a way of jumping up should you so desire. So what we're doing is leaving these as individual stacks, but finding new ways to get up there. The player cannot put a building on here, but we have put buildings on things like this in the past by building up from the ground. So if they wanted to, they could put a staircase on top and then add something on top by putting not a foundation, but a floor up there and then working out that way. And what we're going to need to do is add another way of them getting up here. So terrain objects. So we have nothing selected. And then exactly the same. In the past, what we've done is we've added rock bridges, but I think I want to keep it open and airy. So we'll rotate this around. If we can't see, one of the things we can do is go to terrain, go to the cog and change the time of day. So we can find a time of day when we can actually see what's going on. There is good. Go back to objects and then move this. And already we have a slight problem where we are snapping onto objects that are behind us. So as we let go, we need to make sure that we are in fact selecting the object that is in front of us. Okay, we can turn the water off, display ocean off. I think we don't need that for the time being. What we do need is to know what's going on here. So, select this, C to clone, bring that out, and then R to rotate. Now unfortunately we're just going to have to go around in a bit of a circle around this. We can be quite severe on the height at which the player will have to walk up. So There we go. Some curious sounds from outside as somebody starts their car with a loose fan belt and then honks the horn. Weird. I don't know if you can even hear that in the background, but that's what's going on. So C to clone. And then R to rotate. Ah, okay. So if we were to do this all the way up, this would be obvious that we've just added a spiral staircase around the bottom of the island, and I don't really want to do that. So what we're going to do is level this off in such a way that we create something interesting for the player to jump up onto. T to transform, pull that back, R to rotate. So I really want a platform here, and then we can add some steps using smaller rocks. Let's do this. T to transform. And the nice thing is that all the textures will merge into one another, so it's much less obvious, far less obvious, what's going on. Okay, good. Search around objects so we don't have anything selected. Small rock. We can fill that area in, or we can just put something underneath, which I think we will probably do by doing this. Now I have a feeling if we turn the ocean back on, yeah, that just pops up just above the surface, which is fine. We'll go to objects, and we will go to big rock, find a big rock, any of the big rocks, just pop it in underneath, just to fill in that gap, and green to bring it out, which means this might need to come out a little bit so that you can just swim through there, or at least peek through there. Excellent. Go back down to the small rocks. You just wanna, what I want is that we fill this in and it doesn't look like a bunch of items from the toolbox. Sometimes, even in professional games, you'll see a bunch of items pulled out of the toolbox and just stacked up as individual rocks, and that's something I'm keen to avoid. Okay, small rock. So what we're going to do is move this in here. Now we need the player to be able to get up onto here, and after that they can pretty much take care of themselves in terms of jumping up. Which means maybe just getting slightly creative. It's one of those things we'll have to test once we're in the game itself. R to rotate. Okay, how is this looking? Interesting? Yeah, that's hopefully what we're going for. We'll do the same thing here. Now we could clone that step. That's probably what we should do. But I don't want a gap will be fine, but I don't really want a gap there. The height can be quite aggressive, I think. And then another one. In fact, I think we will clone that. C to clone. And just do that. So hop, 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 hop on the top, and then you can probably get around up there. Not a problem. But in order to aid anyone who does go up there, we'll just put this here. Like that. Okay, I think that would work quite well. We can rotate that a little bit more. There you go. So it's not easy, but it's not impossible. And then something up the top as well, just to aid you once you're up there. Does this have a nice flat surface? It does not. This is, oh, it's not too bad there. Okay, and T to transform, we'll just pull it out a little bit. Just move it around till it feels like it fits. Okay, fine. Excellent. What we can do is rotate that one 180, because we have the same edge down there and it looks very obvious. So T to transform and just pull it in a little bit. Fine, good, excellent. So we have something that's very easy to jump up on. Or at least we think it's easy, but we can go to objects, Close that up. Structures, door. Yes. Oh yeah, very easy. You probably even jump up onto the second step first. So the player should be able to jump up quite easily onto the top. Hooray! The player is now on the top. Good. It's not a particularly tall stack as things go. The aeroplane is taller than it, but players will want to hop up on anything they see. They just like billy goating up on things. And that is why we're going to do that. But now we have a bunch of rocks stacked on the outside of our island, looking kind of awkward. And we're going to need to do something about that. So we're going to need to dress all of this. Excellent. Trees, cocoa bush. Yep. Really? Maybe. Maybe we can get away with adding the cocoa bush now. We would need to be very careful about it. So find a way of doing that. T to transform. Pushing it in. F focuses, although I really shouldn't have done that. We can actually probably just add that onto a side. This stack might be too small to get away with this, but we'll try. T to transform. We could just put it into the stack itself. Move it up slightly. Maybe. Maybe it's still too big. Let's have that in. T to transform. The trouble is it is now poking out of the top. And I think this item... to rotate. I think this item actually is bigger in game than it is out of game. And this might still work. Yeah. Yeah, okay. So we're going to need to be very careful, but we can add a little bit of greenery to our sea stack by doing this. I think that works quite well. Okay. So as long as this doesn't get too big and just kind of block access or even vision, that should be fine. Yep, so that's fine. Terrain objects. That's just a way of decorating this rock using very few items. So, well, the nana plant is definitely the next thing that needs to go in. You're going to be careful with the nana plant because what you don't want to do is put it in a position that is going to block the player. It's one of those items that really doesn't like someone standing on top of it. Let's do that. Let's do that. Just rotate it so the leaves just kind of fit in such a way that they overhang but aren't visibly clipped into the terrain. There we go. Nice. Now what we can do is also add the wild lava because we know we've done that before in such a position where you can just add bits to the outside. Let's do that and that. We don't need too many of them, just in such a way that they look convincing. There. Max reached. Max wild lava plants reached. There is a limit of them. I don't think I've ever pulled out enough of them to reach that limit, which is fine. So terrain objects, we'll have to go and use other things at this point. So Ceremon 2, let's grab you in. Yep. And we can do the same thing, just make sure that the leaves are fairly okay, that they're not super clipping and they are, the base is visibly in the terrain, which it is. Yes, it is. Good. Excellent. We can also add ficus tree to here now that we have this bush. So what we can do is add we can try the large ficus. So ficus tree 2. Let's see what that looks like. It might work, it might not. R to rotate. T to transform. And just bring the whole thing right down. R to rotate. And there's a very, very real chance we get this thing stuck in the world. No, that's okay. Oh. Nope, we've got it. We've got it. So I'm going to try and keep the top clear of stuff. And just do basically what we've done before. We have a slight problem. Some of the root is sticking out, which I don't think we can select that now. We cannot. That is frustrating, but fine. So terrain objects, we have nothing selected, because sometimes you'll pull something out of the toolbox and other things will move as well. We'll grab a big rock and we will place that in such a way that it just obscures the fact there is a giant root sticking out there. That's good. Excellent. And that also changes the base shape of this piece here. Yep. The thing about the ficus is you can't build where a ficus is, so you can't put a house there. You can, if we keep the top clear, you can do that. So we have something that looks relatively okay. I mean, this looks fine as a sea stack. We can go back to our time of day, change the time of day, various times of day. We do have a lot of shadow, so this side is possibly always going to be in shadow, whereas if we set it to midday and change to the other side of the island, this side is always going to be in sunlight, except for the very early morning. So there's many things that we can even select. Oh yeah, there is. Interesting. So we have a little sea stack there that you can jump up onto. What we can also do is go back to trees, probably add another nana on the outside, just growing out of the rock. Don't need to be too careful about how this one is positioned, but we will. So that if you're coming in on a boat, then it doesn't just look like we've forgotten to decorate the other side of the rock. And we'll do the same thing here. Just pop that in. And there's a good reason to have this growing out here. T to transform, bring it in a little bit, and then R to rotate. Make sure the leaves aren't too badly clipped in, which they are. There you go, it's better. So as the camera jerks around a little bit, it means as you're standing here, you look down and you get the edges of those leaves. You don't need to see the whole thing, but you do get the edges of the leaves, you get the foliage here. The island itself is now slightly obscured, but if you were to jump up on here, and you were to look around as a player, you can still see the aeroplane, you can see the other rocks, and you can see the tops of the plants below you, so it looks like this thing has life. And then you have the actual ocean itself, and if you wanted to, you could put down into the sea. Excellent. Or you could just walk down. Good. Excellent. So we focused on that. We're going to need to decorate the other ones as well, but I think what we can do is just finish this one off for the time being. So the Saruman and the Alocasia are good. Nice big plants. Alocasia 1, Alocasia 2. Which one's that? I think the Saruman, another one of these, just to add a little bit of structure. That is in. Let's rotate it around slightly. T to transform. Push it in so it's more hugging the cliff itself. R to rotate. And the reason we do this is just so that you just don't have a bunch of naked rock, because the naked rock is fine, but it also doesn't look great just by itself. I think these bigger ones are okay for the inside of our forest, but smaller ones are probably better. So let's do this. Rotate this around. Need to transform. Let's bring it in. Not too worried about this leaf clipping because it's largely something you can't really see. But we'll still clean it up a bit. Okay, that's better. Yeah, that's better. That is not really clipping into the rock, but you wouldn't even notice from there. And then something here? Do we need something here? Probably. I mean, it does feel like we need something there. We could try adding another bit of bush, cocoa bush. We can do that like this, T to transform, and just push it in as much as we dare. Drop it down into the sea. And push it in. And just move it until we feel like this is... So we have some underwater. I don't think it matters too much, honestly. I don't think it matters too much, but we can do something, cover that up a little bit. Big rock, possibly. A big rock 4, definitely. There you go. Just cover that up. So that if this does actually come out further, then if it comes out further because the actual model is bigger in-game, having this rock here will just disguise all of that anyway. So that looks a lot better. That looks a lot better. Instead of just a sea stack, what we have is a bunch of objects and items just hiding the rock itself, so obfuscating the rock. You can still jump up on it. It kind of looks like a bit of a mess here, but in-game, when there's weather effects and things going on, it's going to be less of a problem. But wait, there's more. Yeah, we could put a structure on top if we wanted to. We could put a little shelter on top. We've done that before with other things. So we could put a small shelter, well, a small shelter. Like shelter 7 should go up there quite nicely. I think there's another one. Shelter 8 is too big. 9 is definitely going to be too big. Yes. So we could put something up there if we wanted to. But what we might do is just think about that for the time being. Oh, this one. This is the one I was thinking of. So we could put something like that on top. Just to say, well, somebody did actually live up here. It gives the player an opportunity to come up here and have a little look at stuff. It would stop them building anything up there. That would be a downside to that. And it would also be quite impractical for a shelter to be up there anyway. But if you wanted to do that, you could. I think I might just leave that though. We're going to need to look at this in game to see how it actually looks. But I think it's quite big and quite imposing, especially compared to the other side of the island. So you have these here, which kind of shelter you from the actual ocean itself. You are looking at the ocean as we get closer. Ah, yes, the wild lava does pop in. So there is an aggressive LOD on those, but that might just be in the map editor. So one side of the island is rocky, and the other side of the island is very sandy with lots of trees. So we are defining our island itself, and things are getting bigger. Much, much, much bigger as we look from above. Yeah, looking way more detailed, way more interesting. Good, excellent. I'm going to leave it there for the time being, so if you like this, definitely leave a little like, leave a subscribe if you haven't subscribed already. If you want notifications, dingle the bingle. If you don't want notifications, don't click the bell, and I'll tell you what, I'll catch you next time.